Shireen Vishmaya in San Francisco, California, and we've got a Mercury retrograde happening now. A lot of people, of course, have already gone into panic, as happens every Mercury retrograde, and then we lose sight of the opportunity. So I actually just started a Project 40 devoted to this whole journey of Mercury retrograde in Aries because I felt like it was such a powerful one since it was coinciding with the vernal equinox, which we just had yesterday. And I'm making this video on Thursday. And you know, so the passage into the ingress into Aries. And so this coincidence of a Mercury retrograde in this Aries theme also preparing us for Chiron, which will move into Aries next month in April. I feel there's a strong emphasis on the archetype of Aries, or the Emperor archetype, the inner masculine, the inner father. So I wanted to really work with this because Mercury retrogrades are so illuminating for deep inner work anyway. And that's really the opportunity of Mercury retrograde that often gets overlooked, is that we're being forced to slow down, and especially during this Mercury retrograde, because let's not forget that we also have Mars and Saturn in planetary war at the moment. Mars is inching up on Saturn, so it's feeling a lot like we're driving with one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas pedal, and it's really clunky right now, and it feels like it's really hard to get momentum or to move forward in a way that we can start to, the way we like spring to feel like we're, you know, springing forward or shooting forward. It doesn't feel like that right now. It feels like we're being held in check, and it feels like everything is a little bit dampened and sloggy. So we have to use this time now to pace ourselves and to get strategic about our movements, actually, and our plans, because we can feel that it's not a time to just, you know, jump the gun. So, especially now that Mercury is stationing to go retrograde in Aries, the tendency now is to revert back to the self. So it's a journey back to the self. And what I'm doing in the Project 40 that we just started, and I'm going to let people in for just maybe 1 or 2 more days, because I don't want people to get too behind, but I've had some requests. So contact me if you want in, and I can probably get a couple more people in for the journey, because it is a really powerful time to work with these archetypes. And one of the things we've been working on is the hero or heroine's journey. Joseph Campbell called it the hero's journey, and a lot of screenwriters, script writers use this template because it really encompasses the human experience of moving from the ordinary world into the call to adventure, basically the call to face our shadow is really at the root of the hero's adventure. So how do we leave what we call the ordinary world or the known world and go into the unknown, the unconscious, basically is what it is. And we're exploring that over the 40 days, and we're all going to be exploring that over the Mercury retrograde. We're all going to be feeling this call to adventure, which is an inward call to face ourselves, to come home to ourselves. And that's really at the heart of the essence, I feel, of the Aries archetype. It's the I am principle of the self. So all of us right now are being called to look at where we've lost ourselves, you know, whether it's through addiction or distractions, or, you know, we just came out of this Pisces cycle, which has a lot to do with literally getting lost in something that, I mean, ideally something divine, something infinite, but often it's not. Often it's a cheap substitute for that, and we're having to face that now in Aries and say, okay, how do we take ourselves back? What is the path back to the authentic self and that primal self, the primal scream, that guttural cry that you hear infants on the airplanes where you want to grab your noise reduction headphones immediately to tune out, but we can't tune that inner call out right now, that inner primal scream. We all have to pay attention to what in our souls is screaming for our attention during this Mercury retrograde. So, and because all the planets right now, including Mercury, are answering to Saturn, there is this sense of accountability that's going on. We have to look at our actions and our karmas, and I think this Mercury retrograde is really going to take us into the heart of looking at some of our habitual patterns that need our awareness, our consciousness, so that we can change them, especially around communication and being too impulsive or saying things we regret, being too rash, you know, letting anger influence our speech. A lot of us, you know, say things that we don't mean in our heart of hearts, but our ego is lashing out, you know, in the moment. And And this can cause a lot of damage. So there's a revisiting of that and looking at how we can be more mindful in our choice of words. We don't want to lose, sometimes anger is a necessary energy to burn through the BS, you know, but we have to look at where it's also destructive. We don't want to lose the authenticity of it, but we don't want to sugarcoat anything, and we don't want to turn into passive-aggressive tactics. We want to find a way to be direct. That's the blessing of Aries, is being really open and honest and direct, but being mindful and not having actions or words or our communication be too rash in a way that we regret. So it's finding the balance between these two things. And the retrograde will give us a lot of insight and awareness into how we work with this Aries energy in our lives. So look to where Mercury rules your chart, which houses of your horoscope Mercury rules, and also where your natal Mercury is, and then also where Aries is in your horoscope. And these are the different life domains where you'll be getting the most insight over the next few weeks. So other than that, I just wanted to talk about the fact that I think this is preparing us for Chiron entering Aries next month. It's a big shift of Chiron leaving Pisces after 7 years and moving into the sign of Aries. So all of us are going to be working on where we have wounds from anger, either our own anger or anger that's been directed at us, anything that feels abusive or violent or harsh. We're going to all be looking at that, and often, you know, it can bring up a lot of pain. Chiron tends to bring up some of our more painful wounds. So we're, I think, preparing with this Mercury retrograde in a mindful way by looking at our own relationships to anger, impulsivity, even violence. Obviously, I think there's going to be more discussion around gun control and things like this. And also for us to look at how we consciously or constructively channel our own aggression or frustration or our anger. And we can often find this, we can often discover this by looking at our patterns, not only our patterns of thinking, but our patterns of speech, because it'll come out, like a lot of times frustration or anger will come out in the way we communicate, and we might not be conscious of that, but the Mercury retrograde phase is going to help us become more conscious of hidden frustrations, I think, or sources of frustration or trigger points. We often say, oh, this person triggers me. Relationships trigger us. And we often want to blame the other, you know, blame the partner or the boss or the partner, whoever it is, the friend. But if we're getting triggered at something in us, we can't blame the other person. They're just there to set it off for us so that we can see that it's there. It was there to begin with. So it's actually, you know, we should thank them for showing us how we're being triggered and what it is that we still need to become more conscious of in ourselves, that we can have more patience and tolerance with. And that's an ongoing work. So I think a lot of this is going to come up over the next several weeks. We'll be in this Mercury retrograde phase basically until the end of April if you want to count the shadow periods. So it's an excellent time for revisiting all the RE words, as we always say, revisiting, revamping, resting, retreating, revisioning. It's great for editing, returning to old things, wrapping up old projects, and reviewing, like doing a review of what your habitual patterns are in the Aries and Mercury areas of your horoscope or your life. So I hope this was helpful, and please feel free to share and leave comments. Thanks.